All right. And we are live. Sorry about the delay, people, but sometimes these things happen. Am I coming through loud and clear? Nocturnal 91, how's it going? Al Suspiria, what's up? The Daily Ghost, hello. Christian Hannah, Gypsy Warrior, Rock Music Forever. Jamie, hey Jamie, what's up? Jess Graham, hello Jess. Toronto Freddy, what's up? Zombie7979. Jamie Blinks is in the chat. Jamie, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. PlayStation 9, Sean Sr. There's Olivia. Hola, amiga. ¿Cómo está? Captain Halloween, my buddy Keith. Aiden Vavra. All right, am I coming through? Okay, loud and clear. All right, very, very cool. I am extremely happy. I'm tickled pink, as a matter of fact, to be able to be joined tonight by an amazing composer. You all know his name. Why am I even doing an intro? This man doesn't need an intro. Why am I wasting your all's time? Alan Howarth is here. How you doing, sir?
Good. Happy Halloween. Here we go.
Right on, man. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to shoot the bull with me and a bunch of other movie nerds.
Cool. Well, I've lived this for over 40 years. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. Grew up in New Jersey. Came to LA in '74 with a jazz band called Weather Report. Traveled the world with those guys. And my very first movie ever was Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Star Trek: The Motion Picture. We're definitely going to jump into. Definitely going to talk about all that. You've got such a prodigious body of work. If we could be here for hours just talking about all the great work that you've done. But I do want to give a big shout out to Dominic Mancini over at Full Empire Promotions for helping to make this happen. So thank you, Dom. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How did music and making music come into your life? Because I heard that art, sculpting and painting was really your first love.
Yeah. Well, I guess I always knew I was going to be an artist. And when you're a little kid, you don't get access to music as much, but there's crayons and paper and scissors and glue and stuff like that. So I started out expressing myself in art. Did that all through school, but my dad had an old little funky accordion, a little 12 key accordion up in the attic, and I was always fascinated by them. I remember there being hours of just I think going, just fooling with it. So my mother got me accordion lessons. I was like 5 or 6 years old. Moms, promote you. And so I was just getting started on the whole thing, and it was like a local TV star guy, and he was talented, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember going down in his basement taking lessons, and I was up for a lesson. And I finally got my little bop 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 bop, and little bop bop. And I'm in the lesson. I'm playing. I'm feeling like a pretty cool. No teacher, and I'm looking around. Well, where's the teacher? And then finally, my mom comes in, grabs me, goes, "We're leaving." Mom, she says, "We're leaving." Well, I found out later that my teacher put the moves on my mom. So that was the end of my accordion lesson. So music kind of went away. I continued on with art and sculpture, stuff like that. And then you get to be like the 3rd or 4th grade, and they have the school bands, and they do a little music aptitude test. And there was a note went home and said, "Hey, your son has musical talent. You should think about renting instruments." They were trying to rent instruments. They didn't care about me. Mm-hmm. But I looked at the school band of all the instruments, and I wanted either a guitar or piano, but they didn't offer that. The next coolest one was a saxophone. So I wound up taking up the alto sax. So alto sax was like a sideline. Meanwhile, I'm still Mr. Artist and Painter. Gets to be junior in high school. I'm the president of the art class. I'm like one of the kids that looks like he's going to go on and be a professional artist. And this girl in the art class, her boyfriend has a band, and he's going to be playing what we call a sock hop. I mean, we got to understand this is like 1964. So sock hop was you went to the school gym and you did the sock hop because you didn't want to wear your shoes and scratch up the gym floor. Well, invited me. I sat in on reading charts, playing saxophone. And at the end of the night, he whipped out $80, and my eyes went wide. $80. I sat here for 3 hours, made $80. Hell with art. I'm going for music. Well, so Dave actually had a little budding band, a little rock band, and they needed a bass player. So I pestered my mom to buy me $100 bass guitar, and I went to the Sears catalog and got a little bass amp out of the Sears catalog, and I was now a musician guy, and I joined Dave's band and as a bass player, and that I was bit by rock and roll. From then on, it was like hell with art. I'm going to be a rock and roller. You know, wear my hair down to here. My band was made locally. We opened for like Paul Revere and the Raiders. I mean, this is all the ancient stuff for you guys. Eventually, that band, in the band business, you make a recording, maybe you make a record. If the record's not a hit, the band breaks up. Everybody takes their equipment, goes home, and went through a bunch of cycles. One of the bands that finally made it was called Silk. And the Silk had a guy named Michael Stanley in it, who's a big guy in the Northeast Ohio area still as a professional. And the producer of that record was a fellow named Bill Simzik, who also at the same time produced Joe Walsh and the James Gang. And Bill Simzik went on to do the Eagles. That's how Joe Walsh wound up in the Eagles, was through the producer connection. But we opened for the Who. I opened for Cream. I thought I was going to be a rock star, and that was my thing. Well,
Didn't you receive a special gift from one of the greatest bass players of all time, John Entwistle from the Who?
That's true. And all those guys were so cool. And so at one point, the roadie's in the back, and he's changing the bass strings on John Entwistle's bass guitar. And this was a set of roto sound strings. So before that, the access you had to bass guitar strings where they were smooth wound, and they were like bump, 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 kind of bass. And now the magic of Entwistle was these roto sounds, which were round wound like guitar strings. And they went clang. And so he like they were used, touched by the master, but nonetheless he gave me a set of the roto sounds. I put them on my bass, and I nursed those things for like a year and a half until they were finally available in America. And the funny part was you could revive them if you boiled them in vinegar, because the thing that changed the sound was your finger gunk getting in between. So if you clean all that out, they'd be bright again. So I nursed that. I still actually have the bass strings, as funny as that sounds. I couldn't let them go. They're in a little packet. I didn't get them signed at the time, but
I've heard of boiling the bass strings to kind of bring that newness back to them. I've never heard of boiling them in vinegar though.
Yeah, vinegar was a little bit more. It wasn't corrosive, but it was enough of a solvent to. It was just light, but whatever. Cleaned them up.
Yeah.
And so I nursed that, and then so. I went on. I had my own original bands. There's one we call Braino, which was sort of like my Pink Floyd band. I was already in quadraphonic. Had tape echoes and all this other stuff. And we were set up in a little club in Cleveland called the Smiley Dog Saloon, and that bar's specialty was jazz acts. And the idea was they would book midweek national level jazz acts, whether it was Chick Corea or Sun Ra or Herbie Hancock or all this other stuff. And we were the house band. So I had my quadraphonic sound system all set up, and we did sound for these bands when they came through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. This jazz band Weather Report comes through, and they were really friendly. This was Joseph Zawinul, Wayne Shorter. The bass player at the time was called Miroslav Vitus, and then Eric Gravatt and Dow's, I forget his last name. Anyhow, they were traveling, and we did the whole number. We gave them echo and quadraphonic, and they went to the club. Who are these guys? What is this? And a couple others goes, well, this is local guys. This is Alan, and our sound guy named Brian Risner, and he was out doing the tape echoes and all the manipulation. And so they said, you should take one of these guys on the road. Well, at the time I had a job at a music store called DeFiore's Music. So Brian Risner went out on the road with them and became their number one road guy, sound guy for a decade. And so through the modulations of stuff, it gets to about 1976. Weather Report now has gone beyond just being a jazz band. They're part of the Jazz Fusion group. They're doing touring. And Joe Zawinul's synthesizer rig has now gone from a Rhodes and a Farfisa organ to like two ARP 2600s and an Oberheim and a lot of setup. So Brian said, hey, you want to come out and just take care of Joe's rig for me? It's too much, So I toured with those guys sort of 76 to 80, and that's how I traveled the whole world. I mean, you do this. You usually join the army to see the world. Well, I saw the world from the back of the stage and in the bus, but we went everywhere. I mean, it was, I got to recommend everybody. You got to have some worldview. You got to get outside the United States and see rest of the world. And then when you come back, you actually appreciate the United States. I'm telling you, it's a good place. But
so that's how the synthesizer came into your life.
Yeah, well, I was always fascinated by synthesizers. Even when I was in my Braino days, I already had an oscillator and echoes and Leslie's and sound modification. And finally, I got enough money to buy a EML 101, which is like a mini Moog kind of thing, a company out of Connecticut. And the thing it played 2 notes at once. That was the big fascination. So I already had a synthesizer, so that was part of my learning. And then also in this music store, Di Fiore's, I was down in the repair shop, and so I started poking around in circuit boards and stuff like that. I got trained as an ARP serviceman, so I was able to open the thing up and know it was in the box. And I've always been that kind of kid. I used to have electric trains and take them all apart. My dad would freak out. "What are you taking them apart for?" "Well, I got to know how they work, Dad." And I was able to put them back. And every now and then there was always a couple screws left over.
Yeah, of course.
But it was just a thing. So the modulation from that weather report, they're now in Los Angeles, and I wind up. It's like 1979. The band is like not touring. They're into a long recording session. And there's kind of like not much going on, and I start work. My wife Melody is work at UCLA, and she's in film school, and she's making a movie. And I said, "I'll do the sound for your movie." So I started, I wrote some music for it and some sound effects, and I had this other big burly biker buddy from Cleveland that was also in Los Angeles now working at Paramount Films, and he saw me doing this stuff. And as it turns out, he was in Paramount in a transfer bay, just making copies of tapes, sounds, stuff like that. And 2 guys are standing behind him, having a conversation about how they need somebody who knows about synthesizers. And so he took someone and goes, "Oh man, you're gonna talk to my buddy Alan, man. Yeah, he knows all about that synthesizer stuff. He works for Weather Report." And they look at him and go, "Weather Report? Is that the one at 7 o'clock or 11 o'clock?" I mean, they don't know the answers. But nonetheless, they took my number and they gave me a call. It was this guy, Richard Anderson and Stephen Flick, who are now, Academy Award winning sound supervisors, stuff like that. But we were all just kids at the time. And they were working on Star Trek, the motion picture. So they said, "Hey man, make us an audition, make us the sound of the Starship Enterprise going from Warp 1 to Warp 7, which was a scene in the movie." And so I went back and I had my little Prophet synthesizer and my 4-track tape recorder, and I dialed up, used the Polymod and the Prophet, which, I still got a Prophet here. That's one of my main axes forever. Dialed up stuff, turned in the tape, and that became the sound of the Enterprise, or at least one of the elements. So I got the gig, and that put me on Star Trek. Did Star Trek the motion picture. It was quite an experience because that particular movie, they hired this guy named what's his name, Robert Abel, to do the visual effects, and he was like a commercial guy. He wasn't a feature film guy, but he was really clever and had all kinds of cool techniques. That's why he got it. But the movie was had 250 special effects shots. We're getting into like a month, and a guy comes up with his first effect. So it was obvious he was on overload, talent overload. So they went ahead and got John Dykstra and Doug Trumbull, went to their shops, put them on 7 days a week, 24/7, money's no object, alert to make these sound visual effects. And as the sound effects people, we used to go do field trips and see kind of stuff in work in progress, because nothing was going to come to the last minute. Because what had happened, Star Trek had made a commitment to screen the movie for NASA on December 7th that year, and that was unmovable. So there was a brick wall that this movie had to be finished. It was so crazy that literally we were dubbing the last reel on December 6th in Los Angeles. And there was a guy from Dolby standing there waiting to catch the reel as it comes off the machine and run it overnight, get on a plane, had the one reel in the seat next to him. The screening had already started in Washington, D.C. for NASA without this last reel in the theater. And the guy literally ran in and dropped it on the projector, and they pushed play. I mean, it was that much to the last of it. So that whole emergency definitely brought me into Hollywood with a wake up call about that. You got to keep your cool. Don't freak out. So after that, nothing ever freaked me out. That was about the most stressful situation ever.
I bet.
Now the picture editor from that Star Trek, a fellow named Todd Ramsey, his next movie was Escape from New York. And I had been giving him cassettes and stuff, promoting myself. I don't know what's going on. And so he got on Escape from New York, and John had worked with another studio on Halloween and The Fog, and kind of he was checking out what else was out there. The guy's name was Dan Wyman, nice guy, definitely did his job, but he kind of the window up, and Todd said, you and John Carpenter get along. Why don't you meet him? So Carpenter came over to my little Star Trek dining room studio with an 8-track, and had my ARPs and Oberheims and all this other stuff that I had personally. And he sat down for about 3 hours, and I played him music and sounds. And Carpenter looks at me and goes, "Yeah, let's do it." So all of a sudden, that was it. I was now a film composer, blessed by John Carpenter.
What was your first impressions of John Carpenter?
Well, he was just a cool guy. He's from Kentucky. I'm from Ohio. We're basically the same age. We could relate to the same cultural experiences in bands and music and, all this other stuff. And he's just he's just casual. I mean, at no point was I ever became a fan. He was just a buddy. And we sat around doing stuff. And he used to say that he loved doing the music for his movies because it was like being on vacation. Because, all the stress of the production and the editing and the money and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. When it came to music, he literally, turned the phone off, just hang out with me for the day. We'd make music, and he enjoyed it. And as you can see, I mean, even still today, he's wound up back as a musician, still making music, but not making movies anymore because he says making a movie is too much work. He don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. How was he to collaborate with, and what were those first writing sessions like for Escape from New York?
Well, it's his movie. He wrote it, he edited it. So I was pretty much to start out, I was there to keep my equipment working properly and record him. So he'd sit down, and it was even before we had sync between the movie and the sound. So we'd take a pass on watch. I got a little VHS tape and run on the TV, but there was no sync. And every now and then we'd literally just push play on both the machines and just to see how it's kind of going. But to keep track, I put a copy of the dialogue track on the audio recorder so we could listen to the dialogue track and kind of know where we were in the queue. And that was the gear at that time for our fans was I had 2 ARP avatars, an ARP Quadra, a Prophet 5, and I had gotten one of the first Linn drums called an LM1. And so the Linn drum was the master clock, which had a little sync track to the tape recorder, and then the pulses from the Linn drum drove the ARP sequencers. And sort of, it was up to me it was kind of wonky, but I kept it all working. And Carpenter played, but my thing was to dial up all the sequencing because that was my world, So like when you hear like a cue and it's going bomb, 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 bomb. Well, it was my stuff, right? That was the bed that I laid for him. And then Carpenter's a master of themes. I mean, the Escape from New York theme, da 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 da. That's him. That's him stuff. Halloween was dun 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 dun. I didn't get to write that stuff. That's him. But it's his movie. He's John Carpenter.
Yeah.
So let's go. But as we became more buddies, we I remember at the end of Escape from New York, we're doing some mixes. He's kind of getting ready. For him personally, getting ready to do The Thing, and it comes up that they want to do a sequel to Halloween. They want to do Halloween 2. And so, just like a class assignment, John kind of looks over beside me. He's smoking a cigarette, has some coffee, and goes, "Hey, Alan, you're going to do Halloween. I'm going to be busy."
He just dropped it in your lap. He
just hands off Halloween to me and says, I'm too busy to do with that stuff. And he wasn't a big fan of the sequel. So it went to Rick Rosenthal, and Deborah Hill pretty much steered the boat while he was busy on The Thing. And he always said the Thing was the most difficult shoot of his career because it was so strenuous. Like in that opening scene where the dogs are running and they're being chased by the helicopter, they had to go to British Columbia, plant all the explosives and plan the whole thing out before it snowed, go away, wait for it to be snowed, so it was all pristine snow with no tracks, and then shoot it and run it once. Because once you blew it all up, it was over, right?
Yeah.
So there was just a lot of logistics to make all this stuff happening. It was a complicated shoot for him. But it was all his buddies. It was Dean Cundy. The special effects guy Rob Bodine. Bodine did amazing stuff, and it was Bodine's idea to make the Thing be anything that it could morph. And so it was a brilliant idea, but he kind of buried himself because now he had to keep coming with all these different configurations.
Mm.
And this is before CGI, so it was a lot of goo and wires and rubber, and they'd burn the thing up. Well, once you burned it, having another one, if you want to do a retake, that was not happening. So
Yeah.
it was pretty stressful. Bodine, really the whole amazing part. And then Bodine always figured he'd have the creature sort of in the shadows, and Dean kind of goes, "Oh no, let's light it up. Let's show the whole thing." So all of a sudden, the detail and the level of perfection on these things was raised up, 10x. So
Oh yeah.
it was pretty amazing. So I did help John. He had Ennio Morricone do the score. Ennio did 2 passes, one with the orchestra, and then he came back with a bunch of synths, and that's where that first opening sequence came, when John kind of wanted more synth music than orchestral music. And then we did a final pass. John came over for one afternoon, and there was a bunch of just kind of droney cues that were done. It kind of sounded like Christine a little bit, and that was like, so there was 3 passes on the music for the thing. Meanwhile, on Halloween, I worked directly with Rick Rosenthal and Deborah, and I had the score to Halloween 1, which is iconic. So I made a transfer. It was on a 2-track, 16-track, 2-inch. And then I transferred to 24 tracks. I had a bunch of open tracks. So Halloween 2 score is basically John Carpenter's Halloween 1 score with me overdubbing a bunch of other synths and textures and colors. And then I had to do a couple cues where there was some new scenes that needed new music. So I did that. So
was there a point where it all kind of clicked for you, whether you being at the mixing board or just jamming with John Carpenter, and you were like, "Hey, I'm a film composer now," and you were like, "This is it for me. This is my thing now."
Yeah, I'll say yes. During Escape from New York, it was way more fun to do music than do sound effects, although I still enjoyed sound effects.
Mm.
And even as an artist, so here's one thing we didn't plug together. So on that first Star Trek movie, I had been in bands and done stuff like that. But when I was asked to do sound for images, the artist in me kicked in.
Mm.
So when I see images, I kind of know what it's supposed to sound like. Whether it's a Star Trek or a Escape from New York or whatever movie. I mean, I did Raiders, and we can go to all the stuff I've gone through. But I found my spot. Was the idea of doing sound for image was like me versus being in a band, playing in the bars, or even playing concerts. So that became my stuff, and you could then get married and have a house and kids, and it's way better than living in a bus with beer and pretzels.
Yeah. Well, you've of all of the collaborations that you've done with John Carpenter, and there are many, what did you learn from him when it comes to creating music for film?
Well, I watched one of the real masters of especially horror movies, but filmmakers in general, create the music for his own movies. So now he, in his head, knew what the music he wanted was for that particular scene. And I learned musical storytelling. Mm. So in classical music, the one you always say is Peter and the Wolf, where you had a little theme for the wolf, and you had a theme for the rabbit, and you had a theme for the characters, and that's how you told the story with theme telling. Well, that's sort of the core stuff. But then Carpenter, because we were doing it on synthesizers, we were big fans of like Tangerine Dream and Klaus Schulze and sort of the European synth guys. Mm-hmm. And because I was technically, I could open these things up, so I got a lot more stuff out of the synths than a normal person would. And I was an early pioneer of the Prophet 5, which is a programmable synth, which was a big leap forward in the world of synthesizers. Before that, you had patch cables, and you had to plug together or something. And if you didn't put all the switches right back to it didn't sound like the next day. But the programming of the Prophet was a breakthrough in synthesizers, and that was in 1978. So that was just before I started on the Star Trek. So that was one of the things everybody liked about me, is I could make the same sound 2 days in a row.
Well, you're known predominantly for genre movies. Were you a fan of horror and sci-fi growing up?
Oh, sure. I mean, Close Encounters and Star Wars, and even when I was a little kid, The Blob, and obviously Forbidden Planet was like, that was the beginning of the whole thing. That was the first electronic music score to a movie, and it was way far out, compared to regular music. And so I loved all that stuff. I was a big Buck Razors fan on TV, and so I watched that stuff as a little kid. And I remember one movie there was that really struck me. There was a movie called The Tingler.
Ah,
And so that one, there was sort of like a lobster that would get in people's backbones and take them over. And it was the first interactive movie. So at the end of the movie ends and everybody dies, but then it does a trick where the movie kind of goes white, and then you see the shadow of the Tingler up in the projection booth, and the guy who had the movie theater actually took like a fire extinguisher and blew stuff across your feet from behind, so you felt something in the theater. Like, oh, I enjoyed that. That was really cool stuff.
well, when it comes to the Halloween 2 score in particular, of course, I mean, I think even at that time in like 81, I mean, the original score for Halloween was considered a classic. I mean, was it not?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
when you're working on a sequel score that is, or to a sequel movie with such an iconic score, how do you approach that while keeping the original score intact but adding on to it? And I think you brilliantly added on to the Halloween 2 score, because Halloween 2 is a much darker, meaner, more graphic film, and your score is darker, meaner, gothic. I love the Halloween 2 score, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, remember, I had John's original Halloween score already recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just overdubbing against John, doing my own thing, replaying the Halloween theme, but with a different setting on the synthesizer and making a stack. So the first Halloween score is pretty simple. It's
Mm-hmm.
really piano driven. And Dan Wyman was the recordist for him on Halloween. And Dan had a Moog modular synthesizer in there, and maybe an Oberheim. So there was some synth textures, but it was still pretty driven, and there was no rhythm in it, whatever. It was just John going dun 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 on the piano as the basic track. In fact, when we did Escape from New York, John actually wanted me to put a real piano in my dining room, which because that was his thing. He'd start at the piano, and everything would grow from there. Mm-hmm. So all that was recorded. But now I'm going, the Tangerine Dream in me is coming out now as a synth overdrive guy and dialing up the sounds. And the ending is much more violent at Halloween 2, burning them and all this other stuff. So we were going for something a lot stronger. The first one was all in the house and running around. Now we're going to go different places and have different stuff happening. So I just did what felt right.
You've mentioned Tangerine Dream a couple of times. I love Tangerine Dream too. Is there a particular Tangerine Dream score that you think is their best work?
Well, Sorcerers is definitely the one that goes over the top. But just their records alone, it was the sequencing that was really the part that made it work. I mean, they Edgar Frost and Chris and there was a couple other guys that were like third party to the thing, but it was mainly the two of them that did that stuff. And they had committed to some big rigs. They had some big modular synths, so they were doing stuff. When we were on one little synthesizer, on the dining room table, they already had big studio stuff in Germany. They had committed, so they always had the cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to composing music, do you sit down with the filmmaker and talk about the mood and the atmosphere that they're shooting for, or do you watch the film and then create the music that you feel complements the mood and atmosphere and whatnot?
Sure. Well, two flavors. Obviously, with John Carpenter, he sat down and it was his movie. Mm-hmm. So I was sort of in the passenger seat, and we took the ride. And I kept everything working and recorded, and I put whatever I could on top of what he did. When we got to Halloween 3, we had become buddies enough, and I remember John saying to me, "Hey, Alan, this is going to be really easy. All we got to do is rip ourselves off," which means I loved what we did last time. Let's just do that again. So that whole Chariot of Pumpkins thing in the beginning, I kind of took off on the synthesizers and the sequencers. So he kind of watched me do my thing, and he liked it because it was kind of Halloween, but it wasn't Halloween. And that's of my catalog, that's one of the most popular pieces of music I ever did was that opening chase scene. So it was more collaborative on Halloween 3, and we were kind of cut loose. We weren't married to Halloween original music. So when it came to Halloween 4, the producer says, make sure you have all that Halloween music. I want exactly that stuff again. Because now the Michael Myers character is married to that theme. And the lurking around Haddonfield is the da, ba, ba. Those are expected. That's what makes Halloween. And even still today, they have to use it. I mean, even though the stuff we've done almost 40 years later, the original compositions of Carpenter are iconic. They're there. So back to your question. So when I'm left alone, I'm in a new movie, et cetera, et cetera. What I do is I just sit down and I watch the movie once without anything. Because that's the last time I'll be in the audience for a long time. Now I'm going to start picking the thing apart. It's like when you make a record. It's hard to enjoy the song because you've gone through all the drum overdubs and all the piano dubs and all the synth stuff and the guitar work and the mixing and you're so into it, trying to perfect it, that you can't enjoy it because it's like you're down in the engine room making the thing working. You can't drive, you can't pilot the ship anymore until you get to the end and you kind of sit back and go, oh. So that's how it goes. I don't write anything down, but I do try to come up with some themes, some simple phrases, just like a Carpenter thing, 4, 5, 6, 8 notes, something that gets to be something that I'm going to use over and over again throughout the movie that has some meaning to what this movie's about. So that's where it starts. And then because, today we got all this technology, I just put the movie up and just start playing and do the sequencers. And then I'm jamming against the movie. And then I edit and cut and stuff like that. And it's kind of where the movie goes is where I go. So that's my guide is still the movie, which we talked about before. That's what my thing is. When I watch the movie, I know what it's supposed to sound like or what the music's supposed to be.
Well, there's a reason why your score for Halloween 3 is so popular, because it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And actually, Jamie Blanks, who's a filmmaker in the chat, watching right now, he mentioned that that pieces of the Halloween 3 score were used in several trailers for 80s movies, like Maximum Overdrive, for instance.
Yeah, no, that was our first shot at we weren't committed to Halloween anymore, and we just go for it.
Yeah,
and so. And by then, the technology had pumped up a little bit. I think I had a Prophet 10 synthesizer by then. I don't think I had no samplers yet. That was still all analog synth. And that's the other thing is there was no computers. You actually had to play. What a concept.
Yeah, geez. Think about that. When it comes to all the amazing scores that you worked with John Carpenter, or for John Carpenter films, Escape from New York, of course, Christine, Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness, They Live. Which one stands out to you as like your best work or your favorite, and why?
I'd say Big Trouble in Little China. There was an apex of technology. That was when we finally had some computers and a thing called MIDI. So MIDI was called Musical Instrument Digital Interface. So before that, we had an analog 24-track machine, and you'd make different takes to stack the synthesizers, right? Each time you go through and record a new one. Now you had a place where you could play the one keyboard of one synthesizer and have them all connected together. So you could push the note on one synth and have 9 of them play at the same time. So it has these big MIDI stacks that only happened then because the technology finally kind of crystallized at that time. We did it with emulator 2s. I had a Kurzweil, original Kurzweil. I had the ARP avatars, which are like ARP Odysseys. Then the sequencers and the Linn drum machines. I had 2 Linn drum machines. It was a big stack, number one. Number two, the movie itself went to a lot of different places. So like a Halloween, you're stuck in a house in Haddonfield and the music's going to be just go there. The Big Trouble in Little China had rock and roll. We had Chinese influenced music. We had scary stuff. We had spooky things. We had heroic stuff where the hero was going to be over that, the whole Lopan thing at the end with the whole climax. So the movie opened up the opportunity for a lot of different kinds of music. And then the clincher on that, back to visual effects. The visual effects were taken longer than they were supposed to. Normally we had about 6 to 10 weeks to work on a show, but the visual effects were taking like a month longer. So we actually finished the whole score in 10 weeks. And then I had a full month to go through and fine tune the whole thing. And really, take stuff that we came up at the end and put it back at the beginning and really, really produce it. So that was the maximum production of a John Carpenter score was Big Trouble.
Mm, very, very cool. Yeah, because that movie is just such a smorgasbord of every genre. So I mean, you get a taste of everything in that movie. That's what makes it so fantastic.
Most of that guitar work is me. Being the rock and roll guitar player guy.
Yeah.
And there was an effect on the ARP Avatar which had a thing called a hex fuzz. So normally when you distort a guitar, you take the guitar, you plug it into a box, and the whole sound of the guitar gets distorted as one signal. This time it took every string and distorted it independently. So you had six fuzz tones running at the same time. It's a unique sound. So that's one of the characteristics of what was happening with that.
Very nice.
The guitar playing in that one.
Yeah.
And then concurrently, we now had the Coupe de Ville show up. So Tommy Lee Wallace and Nick Castle, because they did the Big Trouble in Little China song and produced that, and that was also along with it. So those guys were hanging around. So that really pulled the Coupe de Ville in for Big Trouble. And then Adrienne Barbeau, as a gift to John for his birthday, paid for Coupe de Ville to record a whole album. So there's a very coveted Coupe de Ville LP that floats around, which is Coupe de Ville, which was John and Nick and Tommy from the days of college, and me recording it. So I was like the fourth Coupe at the time. So the four of us made that record, and that it was a lot of fun. It was just a lot of fun working with everybody, and all those guys are buddies now. I literally just saw Nick Castle this week. I went to him, and here I'll show you. I went and I got him to sign some Halloween masks. And look at this.
Oh wow!
Nick Castle, The Shape.
Very cool.
So I'm having an auction on this stuff. I'm playing a concert actually on Halloween in Middleton, New York, at a drive-in theater called the Fair Oaks Drive-In, and there's an online raffle. So if people want to go to the thing and click on tickets, they can go in and buy raffles. It's $5. I've got two Michael Myers. I've got this one, the old one, and then I have the 2008 version. I have that here too. Hold on. So Nick actually did a cameo where he was the Shape in the new one.
Mm-hmm.
So I got him to sign one of the old ones too.
That's cool.
The old Michaels. And then Tommy Lee Wallace, he signed the Halloween 3 masks for me. So I'm going to have prizes on that auction. So you don't have to be there. So you don't have to be there, but that's happening this Saturday. And then at the same time, for anybody who's on the East Coast, and it's going to get a little chilly, but I'm going to actually play a live show, and we're going to screen Halloween 1, 2, 4, and 5 at the drive-in theater on Halloween. So, going trick or treat is a little funny this year. So it's something people want to come out and bring all their accoutrements and enjoy the night. And certainly do what you want to do and have fun.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds like a blast. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. I played there actually on Labor Day at the same place, and everything was so successful and it was so much fun. I said, let's do it for Halloween, and they agreed to me. So it's a little colder. We're kind of pushing the drive-in theater envelope, but you can't go to a regular theater. So what else are you going to do, right?
That's true. That's very true.
And actually the sound is pretty good, because what they do is when you go to drive-in theater now, you dial up an FM station on your car stereo.
Mm-hmm.
So the funky speaker that used to go in the window is all gone.
Yeah.
So the sound's pretty good. So the last ones, everybody had great sound in their car, and they could, run the engine and put the heater on if they're cold. So here we go.
Oh man, that is awesome. One aspect of your career that I wasn't as familiar with until recently was your work in sound effects. Is the creative process the same when it comes to sound effects as it is for composing music, or are they completely different animals?
You do it on the same equipment, so that part, it's the same.
Okay.
And back to the I'm still painting with sound, whether I'm doing music or I'm doing sound effects. And because I had launched myself as a sound effects designer for the first Star Trek, all those people knew me, and I had a whole parallel career. I did the 6 Star Treks as the Enterprise guy. The same sound effects crew I worked with went on to be all famous on all kinds of other stuff. I did Poltergeist, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Hunt for Red October, Stargate, Back to the Future 2 and 3, The Little Mermaid. I got into Disney over there for a while. So I was like an A-list sound effects or sound designer. And for me, it's the same stuff.
Hmm.
You know, it's still painting with sound. It's not notes now. But there's an interesting story, if you got a minute, on this whole sound effects stuff. I'm working on Poltergeist, right? And so, we're sitting spotting this time. Now I'm sitting with the director, and we're doing a big list of everything you need, this and this and this and this. I'm sitting with Steven Spielberg, Michael Kahn, who's the picture editor, Frank Marshall's the producer. And we're sitting there, and we're spotting for sound effects. And we came to the part in the movie, I don't know if you remember the movie, but there's a part where the little girl disappears, and she's now with the ghosts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so she's in another dimension.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm spotting with Steven Spielberg, and he looks at me, and he looks directly right to me. I'm the guy who's supposed to make this, and I say, "Well, Steven, what do you want her voice to sound like?" And he goes, "Earth to Venus." Well, now this is Spielberg looking at you directly, telling you Earth to Venus. So what do? You don't flinch. I go, "Oh, that's brilliant, great." I write that down, Earth to Venus. I have no fucking idea what he's talking about, but I write it down. And I go out in the hallway, and I'm starting to sweat. Like, if I never get this right, I'm in front of Spielberg. If I don't make up something that's amazing, I'll never work in this town again. I mean, it was like a lot of pressure. Go back to the studio the next couple of weeks. I'm trying all kinds of stuff. Now, this is before computer, so I didn't have all the digital WYSIWYGs. There was a thing called Eventide Harmonizer, which was the one digital pitch shift, but it sounded digital. It didn't sound organic. And so I'm trying a bunch of stuff. It's not working, and I'm the guns to my head, like, where are you going to come with this stuff? And I'm riding in the car one time, taking tapes into Paramount, because it was before internet. You had to run your tapes in and stuff like that. And on the radio comes Led Zeppelin song "Whole Lot of Love." And in the about 2/3 through the song, they go into the psychedelic part where the band breaks down, and Robert Plant is singing, and when he sings, he goes, "You need my love," and there was this turned out to be an accident, where there was another dub of his vocals running on some headphones on the floor, and it bled into the take, and it was a little ahead of him. So there was a little pre-echo going, "You need my love," and they left it in the record. And I went, "Oh, that's it, Earth to Venus, that's what he wants." And that was the inspiration to make reverse reverb, to have the sound come from another dimension, approaching the listener. Then you'd hear the voice, and then it would echo out. So I took took a tape of the little girl's voice, and it was all on tape recorders, right? Again, before stuff, I had an 8-track recorder where I could play with the speed of the tape, and I put the tape on backwards, and I played it into reverb in reverse. So now I had reverse reverb coming in as yummy, and I made a couple passes on it. And meanwhile, I'm fooling with the speed, so it's a little wobbly, it's a little wafty. It's not just straight reverb. It's going to go, and they loved it. The day was saved. Now, the funny part about that design is I still hear that exact same concept even today that became the template for what you do with interdimensional voices. Like even in the last Star Wars, when Ren is talking to the other guy and they're communicating mentally, it's the same effect on the voice.
Mm.
So that was one of those moments where somebody threw something at you and you had to figure it out, and it stuck. It was the right answer.
Did you have any communication with Tobe Hooper working on Poltergeist, or was it all through Spielberg?
It's all Spielberg. By then, Tobe was done. He had made the shot. We were in post-production. It was pretty much Spielberg took it over, and he was running the beginnings of E.T. at the same time, so he was in and out. And Frank Marshall did a lot of the mechanics, so I got to meet Frank. What a cool guy. Cool guys. I mean, and Kathleen was just kind of in the wings, looking over everybody's shoulder because she was busy. She was really running E.T. while Frank was picking up the post on Poltergeist.
Yeah.
But you just don't know where this stuff's going to come from, and so because I'm a sound person and a music person, I've now given myself a new title. I'm a sonic composer. I make things with sound. So different. I'm not just a composer. I'm not a sound designer. I'm a sonic composer. I put that up on my LinkedIn, and it's kind of like my retitling of the 2020 and beyond version, and I'm going with it.
I like it.
So let me expand on. You're going to like this story. So about 1990, I'm meeting a lot of people. Because I'm Star Trek, people are bringing me like futuristic stuff and crazy ideas and stuff like that. And I get this book written by a fellow named Wes Bateman. And at the time I didn't know the story, but I'll give you the Wes Bateman's background. Bateman used to give lectures in Los Angeles in Silver Lake about UFOs in the 60s. And the attendees to his lectures was Gene Roddenberry and company.
Mm.
So the whole concept of the Prime Directive and the United Federation and planets and the whole core of what is Star Trek was this guy Bateman. But he was like this, genius character, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Roddenberry came and absorbed all this stuff and made Star Trek out of it. And there was one point where Roddenberry says to Bateman, he says, well, Wes, we're using all your stuff. You should be part of Star Trek. And Wes goes, oh, no, that's a gift just to let me go. Well, the UFO thing got a little crazy in Los Angeles, so he packed up, he moved to the desert in Las Vegas, and he wrote this book, and the guy was a genius mathematically. He analyzed the Great Pyramid of Egypt, of Giza, mathematically. And the idea was he wanted to know the units of measure of the original architect. Because he said, that thing's so amazing that whoever designed that, it's no accident. They were brilliant. So if I would understand the units of measure, so the book was called The Rods of Amun-Ra. And a couple of people might have copies out there, but it's not published. I'm thinking about making a PDF and put it on my website. But he analyzed all the measurements of the pyramid. He never went there, but he read everybody's book who ever went there. So he was within a tenth of an inch of understanding everything was. And he looked at the mathematics of the original designer and came up with a thing called Ra math, R-A, like the sun god, but math. And it turns out that the mathematics of the Great Pyramid keeps reflecting two ratios, which we refer to as irrational numbers. Remember pi r squared from geometry, pi? Mm-hmm. So the ratio of a diameter to a circle comes to this number, but it never resolves. It goes on forever. So that's why it's called irrational. It won't rationalize. The other one it talks about is a thing called the golden mean, which is, it's the ratio of 1 to 1.61. So if you make a rectangle, and it's kind of like what a high definition TV looks like. One side is 1 and the other side is 1.618. And the way it comes is if you make the diagonal of a square and drop it down, it makes that thing. Another irrational number. And I'm going, what's this for? Why is it? And he goes, no, don't understand. These are universal numbers. These numbers are from the infinite. They're from a higher dimension. It's a little far out, but bear with me on this stuff. But if you look at your own hand and you call that part of your finger 1, and you measure the bone length from there to there, the next part of your finger is 1.618 times longer. And if you take that one and you do the next one, it's 1.618 again, and that 1.6 again. If you take your finger, do that, see that? It's like a little snail shell, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That's called a Fibonacci curve. This is everywhere in the design of living things. This is literally God's math. Well, this got my attention, of course. Well, at the end of, and the pi thing obviously is, pi r squared, and there's a whole stuff. Well, at the end of the book, he talked about how the pyramid had sound frequencies that were associated with this math. And my antenna went up like, what? I got to fucking know about this. So I got him up on the phone. Hey, man, I just read your book. One, he was thrilled somebody actually read his book. This was like 1990. It was just from a copy store. It was like 200 copies being passed around amongst studio people and stuff like that. That's how I got a hold of it. And I did the follow-up. And so finally I got to be buddies with him, and I went up to his house, and I sat down with a little Lisa's keyboard, like a little electric piano thing, but it was all digital, and because easy to tune. And he put up an oscillator, and he dialed up a frequency of 423.997 cycles, roughly 424 cycles. And he goes, this is the A note from the pyramid. So normally in music, A is 440. That's when you go to a piano tuner, he tunes to A440, and all instruments are tuned to 440. That's the standard tuning in our Western culture. But he gives me this 424 business. So I sit there and I take the piano and I go, I'm making it flat until the sound of the A note is 424 instead of 440. And I sit there and play the piano for a little bit. And I look at him and go, this sounds like a 17th century piano. And he goes, you're right. What do you mean I'm right? He says, this is the tuning from the Renaissance. And I looked it up, and the first tuning fork invented in the year 1711 was to tune to 423.5. Close enough, like right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mozart's own tuning fork, the one that he had, was 421. Handel was 422, and all these Renaissance composers had their own personal little tuning that sounded right to them. So I'm going, wow, this is amazing. So I tell this story to another author, a fellow named Dr. J.J. Hertock, and he's written a book called The Keys of Enoch. He's kind of like a Indiana Jones character. He travels the world. He's an expert in ancient knowledge, and his thing called the Academy of Future Science, he sponsors. And we travel to the Yucatan, and I measure the acoustic properties of over 200 Mayan temple rooms. And basically, in a studio, you can tune a room for its quote resonance. So you play a thing called pink noise. It sounds like steam, called shh, and then you record that after it goes into the room, and the acoustics of the room make it from flat response, and there's little areas where there's resonance. And I made a resonance table. It turns out that 60% of the Mayan culture architecture is tuned to 432, which is the resonance of phi. Remember the pi and phi, the phi. 432 is the tuning to the phi frequencies. Now, Bateman kept saying about this 424 business, which wasn't in the Mayan culture, but we did an expedition, and I actually rented the Great Pyramid of Egypt to measure it. So I went to Egypt, and I did the same testing, and exactly what Bateman predicted was the frequency of the pyramid was really the frequencies. And so those were the pi frequencies. So now we got pi and phi math. I start showing this at sound healing conferences and stuff like that in San Francisco. And I get a call from this guy, Dr. Alan Sheets from NASA. And he goes, Alan, I heard about your frequencies. We need to talk. Well, he's got an organization called New Equations. It's part of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. It's Edgar Mitchell and all these brainiac guys up in San Francisco. And he goes, we teach a thing that has the resonance of frequencies of souls. And he says in the ancient Egyptian things, they talk about there's 9 soul types. And the Bateman's frequencies, they gave me the 424, but when you rationalize pi, he was giving me frequencies that were from 421 to 427. There was 9 of them. He goes, I wonder if your frequencies from the pyramid correlate to the 9 soul types. And he checked it out, and it did. So it turns out, as an artist, this is for all our musician buddies, check this out. This is my teaching for the day. If you tune the instruments to 432, you're tuning to the physical world, to bodies and bones and eyes and muscles and plants and dogs. They all resonate at the 432. In fact, I measured whale songs, and whale songs sing in this tuning. I mean, the whole of nature is tuned to 432. But then the other part is the pi frequencies are the chakras, and the 424 is the heart chakra. And it goes 424 going up, 425 is the throat, 426 is the third eye, 427 is the crown chakra. So as an artist, if you want to do chill music, you want to tune to somebody's crown, you tune the music to 423. If you want to do love music, you do 424. If you want to do dance music, you do 421 at the root chakra. So this is a whole other tool of tuning music to people's spiritual energy. So I'm all into this. I'm going crazy. I have a website called naturalresonance.net. Go there. There's more about stuff, and I'm making an app right now where you could retune the music on your phone to all these other reference frequencies and express this stuff. So it's a whole thing I'm into. I know it's a diversity, but it's fascinating. I'm fascinated by all this stuff.
I've heard of bands writing songs based on the Fibonacci series. A Tool is a band who writes music based on the Fibonacci series.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah.
We're all connected through like vibrations. And
everything is vibration. I mean, the reason that our whole body is vibrations. In fact, when you are healthy, you are in tune, and when you're unhealthy, you are out of tune, called dis-ease. Right? Something's not happening. Some cells are doing the wrong frequencies, and they're functioning incorrectly. So it's really it's a lifelong commitment to studying music. I've done meditation music with this stuff, and the sound healing thing, and it's funny. I went to BMG, which is my music publisher, with this whole concept and telling about this stuff, and I have patents on the idea of converting 440 to all these other frequencies, which will be part of the app. And they went to me and he says, Alan, this is all amazing. I love your story. Give me one thing that this does. And I said, stress relief. And they said, done. We'll do it. Because people are so tweaked right now.
Yeah.
And if you change the tuning of your favorite song, you get more out of the song being retuned than the standard frequency. It's kind of like, remember AM radio where you had to dial up the radio to the
Right.
right frequency, and when you tuned it to the broadcast, it was super clear signal and it was louder.
Mm.
So in this case, we're already tuned naturally, so you have to retune the music to the receiver in this case. So that's a simple version of what's going on. Sorry, I diversed, but it's a good story.
No, that's absolutely fascinating. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
I do want to give some people sort of an idea of all the, I think when people think of Alan Howarth, they think of film composer, but as a sound effects creator, you've worked on Raiders of the Lost Ark, Poltergeist, of course, The Thing, Gremlins, pretty much all the Star Trek films, Beetlejuice, Total Recall, Army of Darkness, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and that's really just scratching the surface.
Our team got 2 Oscars. We got an Oscar for the best sound effects for Red October, and we got an Oscar for best sound effects on the Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I've been on some AAA level movie sound effects design and creation, and I enjoy it. If you enjoy it, you're good at it, and if you're good at it, you do really good work. So that's always been a thing. I never had an agent or any of that kind of stuff. It was always like relationships that the editor or the director or the buddy of somebody turned me on to the next thing. I just did a movie for a group up in Toronto called Cosmic Dawn. And it was, again, somebody I knew that I met at a convention, and he was an editor, and with this COVID thing and everything shut down. And so I said, hey, look, I'm looking for anything out there. And so there was this independent movie called Cosmic Dawn, new director, Jeff Moreno. And it's kind of a close encounters thing. The movie is about this girl that when she's little, they're in the woods, and a ship comes and takes the mother away, and now she's raised by the aunt. And she keeps telling everybody, my mother was taken by a ship, and nobody believes her. And then she meets these other people that are into this stuff, and for a while we think they're crazy and they're a cult. And by the end of the movie, the ship comes and takes them all away. So I got to score that while our little COVID thing. Had a great time. They love the music. So at some point, Cosmic Dawn will come out after all this nonsense next year sometime. Check it out. I'll make a soundtrack album out of it. Also, check my stuff out. I have a Pandora channel, and I have a Spotify channel. You can listen to all my stuff. I really enjoy the music, and it shows in what I do.
Yeah. No doubt about that.
And then in the world of sound effects, like I said, I'm really tuned to frequencies. I used to tune my sound effects, especially when they were on synths. I used to tune them to the score, or not tune them to the score. Like I had this experience on the first Star Trek where I did a bunch of shuttle pass-bys, and I did them on the Prophet 5, and I did them in the key of G, right? Well, the problem was when the music came up, the music was in the same key, and the sound effects just blended right into the score. You couldn't tell the sound effects were there. So I learned to actually be sensitive to the score and the tuning of the sound effects in comparison to the score to make a soundtrack, to make all this stuff harmonious or disharmonious if you want stuff to stick out. So there's a lot of subtlety in sound effects. And then I did video games. I was in electronic arts. I was just with a company called Magic Leap, which is all this cutting edge, beyond virtual reality. It's called augmented reality, where you put the glasses on, you still see where you are, but now holograms are in the room with you. And so, and you're doing the sound design for holograms, both spatially, where it is in space, as well as the design of the sounds and all the technology that goes with it. And I'm immersed in all this stuff. What can I tell you?
That's really cool. You have a passion for sound. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and sound for images was the trick for me. I mean, I never wrote a 3-minute hit. It just wasn't my thing. And it's funny. I never really learned anybody else's music. I mean, in the bands I did, I guess, to play the songs, but I would never study Chopin or Mozart or whatever. I always just wanted to do my own thing. So I'm not a great musician technically, but I learned enough of it to express what I wanted, and that's all I wanted to do. I guess I'm lazy.
Well, when Halloween 4 came about, really, I mean, you and Donald Pleasance were the only members of the original regime that carried on to the new saga. Did Mustafa Akkad ask you to work on Halloween 4?
Yeah, actually, I got the call from Mustafa, and he said we're doing Halloween again. Would you want to do the score? And I think we were working on Big Trouble in Little China at the time, and literally I went to John because he's my buddy, and I didn't want to create a rift. And I said, hey John, they're doing a sequel to Halloween. They asked me to do the score. Is that okay? I wanted his blessing. He goes, oh yeah, do whatever you want.
Hmm.
He was done with Halloween pretty much at Halloween 2. He got into Halloween 3, and the idea of Halloween 3 was to depart from Michael Myers and go off into Halloween anthologies, where every
Hmm.
Halloween there'd be a different Halloween something. But at the end of Halloween 3, everybody going, what happened to Michael Myers? So then Mustafa took it over in that Halloween 4, and they reinitiated the mask and the whole thing, and here we are today still doing it.
Yeah.
So there was,
Ha-
it's an interesting journey.
mhm.
The darn franchise has made over $1 billion, and the first movie cost 300,000. So you talk about an investment. Holy mackerel!
Yeah. There you go. How was the late Mr. Akkad to work with?
He was actually a very nice man. He was a patriarch. All right, so he was about getting the money together and getting the right people to do it, and then delegating. He didn't really get into the nitty gritty of sitting in the edit or any of that kind of stuff. He was more of an overarching guy. And then he unfortunately he was killed in this situation. So now his son Malik has taken over.
Mm.
That Malik still runs the company and keeps the franchise alive. So that's their legacy.
I love the Halloween 4 score, particularly the opening of that film, because it's kind of it makes sense that you're also into to sound effects and of course composing music, because the
Mm-hmm.
opening of that film, there's sound effects and then there's also music, and it seems like for me, the opening of Halloween 4 with your score and with those images of you know the the farms and the farm equipment and all that stuff, that to me just nothing gets me in the Halloween autumn spirit more than watching that opening.
Cool. Well, thank you for recognizing this. Yeah, it is. It is a sound effects and music sculpture, a sound sculpture
Mm,
that eventually you get to the Halloween notes. But we got 4 minutes before we ever get there.
yeah.
It's just the setup and the it's sound textures. And it's still music, but it's wind, but it's not that the main thing you hear is actually a loop of a cymbal. There's a cymbal sample that's looped. So it's a broad noise like a cymbal versus a note like a piano string.
Mm,
And then the performance of that as a keyboard player playing sound effects, that was my thing. Like that was one of the things I really loved with my sound effects work is I could make sound effects as a composer. So the tools that a sound effects editor had, he could just make copies of tapes and speed them up and slow them down. But I could actually take sounds and perform. So I would perform wind to the scene, and the wind would rise up and go down, and never the need based on what was happening in the movie, just like it would do for Star Trek, speeding the ship up and down. So
mm,
that cross point. Well, with the tools we got today, I mean, the whole thing's on a laptop. I mean, I had
yeah.
$1 million studio of stuff, and now it's all down to some software, which is fine. It's like when people start complaining about, well, all you need is this now, and I go, well, yeah, okay, but in the beginning, all you needed was a pencil, and then you got to a typewriter, and then you got to a word processor. But are
Mm,
you still making art? I mean, it's the product at the end that really counts. However you got there is however you got there.
yeah, exactly. Of Halloween 4, 5, and 6, and I believe you did two different scores for 6. Am I right? One for the
Yep.
theatrical cut and one for the producer's cut, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So back to Halloween 4. Halloween 4 was the first time I was really cut loose from John Carpenter. I could do my own thing.
Right.
So that's why. I mean, of my 3 sequels, Halloween 4's, I established the new space that was Alan Howarth doing Halloween using John Carpenter's original notes. He wasn't around anymore. He was busy doing whatever he was doing.
Mhm.
So that was that. Yeah, the Halloween 4 was my first excursion. That's when I brought all my rock and roll Pink Floyd and King Crimson and echoes and textures into the score. And so of the 3 of them, probably Halloween 4 is my best Halloween Alan Howarth score. On Halloween 5, it was this guy, Dominique Orthan Gerard, and he wanted to go back to the original Halloween, so it was very piano oriented. So now I took direction from the director to take the score to this place. And then we get to Halloween 6. They did the first version, which was called the producer's cut.
Mm.
And now we got Miramax involved. So, they show the movie to the Miramax people, and they decide that they want to amp it up. They want more scare. They want it more rock and roll, whatever. So I did the score, which finally I released the producer's cut. You've seen the movies out there, and from my website, you can buy a Halloween 6 CD that has both scores on it. You can actually hear the differences.
Oh.
So the Halloween 6 was more, again, they keep referring back to the original Halloween as the gold standard. Make something that's as good as that. But then it all got amped up, and I went in and I made rock and roll versions of the Halloween theme with drums and guitars, and pumped it up. And then they did some more scenes and some recuts and stuff like that. So in Halloween 6, the theatrical cut, there was new stuff that I created that wasn't in the producer's cut. So there's 2 versions of the score. So yeah, I did it twice. That's how it worked out. Yeah. And I recycled some. I mean, some of the stuff from the producer's cut made its way into the theatrical cut, but then there was new stuff that was added.
Very cool. And you answered my next question. I was going to ask you, of those 3 scores, which one is your favorite? And 4 is your favorite because that was the one that you were off the reins, kind of, right?
Yeah. That was the first time I could cut loose and do my own stuff. I mean, put my own sonic imprint on the Halloween score. Mm. And Dwight Little pretty much just let me go. He was just really happy with what we were doing. I just remember getting a call from Mustafa and saying, "Make sure you use that Halloween music every time you see that guy with the mask."
That guy with the mask. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I think of those 4, or of those 3, part 4 is my favorite too. Mm-hmm. But I like both of the part 6 cuts, because I mean the producer's cut is sort of that classy original Halloween vibe, but then like the theatrical release just has the guitar riffs in it, and it just kind of goes bigger and louder and more aggressive. So I don't know. I guess I just like your work, period. But
yeah. Well, again, the movie drives what music it gets.
Mm.
So that's how it all occurred. And they also had another sound designer guy in do some sound effects work on the theatrical too. Again, the idea was to amp it up, to take whatever it was and give us the bombastic version of it. And then after Halloween 6, I would have done more Halloweens, but now there was personnel regime changes. New director, he had his buddies, right. And that's just the course. I mean, I if they invited me back now, I'd do it. But now they invited John Carpenter back. How do I say John Carpenter? No, I want to do it. No.
Yeah.
And and at the same time, you got the original guy. He's finally admitted that maybe I should have stuck around. I guess the thing's never going to die. And now he's got his son Cody and his godson Daniel Davies as his team, right? Mm-hmm. So they run the machines and keep all the sequencers going and stuff like that. So, and that's all right in his own house, in his own studio. So he's having a good time. And now they're making music, and they toured. They had a band, and
mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he's going to hand the legacy to those guys to carry on within their careers as they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's good. I mean, it all takes its own course.
Yeah.
And like I said, meanwhile, I'm still out there. I started playing this John Carpenter score stuff back at Halloween 30. This would have been like 2007, 8. And what had happened is they were going to have the Halloween 30 convention, and they were going to ask me to come and talk about the music. And I said, well, rather than talk about it, what if I play it? And they go, you could do that? I go, yeah, I got a laptop and a thing. So I just set up, instead of talking, I played. And that somebody did something on an iPhone and put it on YouTube, and it caught on. And that relaunched me as a performer of these scores. And then, maybe 6, 8 years later, I'm sure that Daniel and Cody goes, Dad, why don't we go play that stuff? You guys are like, Alan's out playing your guys' music. We could do that. And so it kind of got John off the couch, and he did a couple records and relaunched. So that's out there also. So yeah. He does really well. He packs the house. It's a big production, whereas me, it's just me and my laptop and my guitar. It's a smaller production, but different budget too. I do the conventions. I really enjoyed doing the convention. I'm sorry that this COVID thing has killed all these conventions because
Yeah.
one, it's a place to play, and second, it's like a reunion. I get to be with all my buddies for a weekend.
Yeah, right on. Well, we're everybody who's got a question for Mr. Howarth, we'll do like a brief Q&A toward the end of
Oh, absolutely.
toward the end of tonight. And I'll if you're a patron, I've already posted the invite link on Patreon, so go ahead and jump into the green room. I'll post the link just to everybody here shortly, and we'll do like a little Q&A toward the end here. How important is it for you to actually like the movie that you're scoring? When you watch a film that you're scoring and it's not that great, can can that make it less exciting for you to work on, or do you take it as like, okay, I've got to make this thing better? Do you take it as a challenge?
Yeah, number two.
Okay.
I'll take the challenge because you can take a movie that's not done as well and give it a good soundtrack and amp the production value and the value of the movie. In fact, a funny story, the first Halloween, when people screened it without the music, they didn't think it was that good a movie. Mm-hmm. And then when John put the music to it, like, whoa, it crystallized the story. The story was told with the music score. So same for me. It's a little inside joke. I call it turd polishing, but I'll still do it. And I don't cut back. I don't upgrade or downgrade my art. I always do my best. And pretty much the difference is in a bigger budget movie, you got more money, so you can put more time into it. So on a low budget movie, I got a couple of weeks. On a big budget movie, you got 6 to 10 weeks. I did one movie last year, a movie called Hoax, which was a first time director. It was his big life project, etc. And it was a good movie. And I actually put like on and off 2 years on that thing because he kept tweaking it and coming back for more. And eventually we finally settled in and got him where he needed to be. And that was a lot of fun. That was a Bigfoot movie. You should check that out there. It's probably in Vimeo or Netflix or something like that, called Hoax, Hoax.
Okay.
And it's done well. It was a very ambitious project for first director. So we became buddies. I hung in with him. This guy's name is Matt Allen. I just talked to him on the phone a couple days ago, and it took so much out of him. He kind of like needed a vacation from doing it after 2 years to kind of put his head back together and kind of retweak it. He spent like 3 weeks like a month in the woods just chilling, trying to figure out how to be a better director and keep his health up and stuff like that, because it really wore him down. Making a movie is no short thing, but you could do shorts, and let me point this out to young filmmakers. With the new advent of all this virtual reality stuff and iPhone experience and YouTube, there's an opportunity to do short projects, 10, 15 minutes max, and go from A to Z and storing a telly and do it well and get popular on that way. I mean, those are like your demos now, as opposed to passing a script around. People show them something you did, and you literally could shoot a movie on an iPhone.
Yeah.
So back to the technology's there. It's about your art and your buddies, how well can art direct it. I imagine this iPhone 12 has incredible video capabilities and things with low light and all kinds of stuff. You literally could shoot a movie onto a candlelight, and it looks good. Whereas in the old days, you had to have enough light to expose the film.
Yeah.
The media was in your way.
Steven Soderbergh actually shot a film on an iPhone a couple of years ago. I forget what it was called, but and I believe he edited it on just consumer grade editing stuff too.
Yeah.
So I mean,
all the what it's supposed to be was defined by the original tools as this is what you do, but now these brilliant software guys can design that stuff built into a piece of software that costs $39. Mm-hmm. You don't need $1 million worth of gear anymore. So it's now back to the art. What's the story? That's what Carpenter used to tell me. Two Carpenter legacy things. One about music. He said music is the director's velvet glove, which would we say, and that's how you touch people without them knowing they're being touched. Am I supposed to laugh here? Am I supposed to be sad? Am I supposed to be scared? The music does all that for you as the director's tool. The other thing he taught me, he says, hey, Alan, it's really easy to be a director. You just got to know 2 words: yes and no, and direct that way. He says, the idea of, well, I don't know what I want. Give me give me 4 ways and I'll decide later. That just creates more work on their crew. Be indecisive. He says, even if you say no today and you say yes tomorrow, or yes today and no tomorrow, that's okay. But he says, being a director and directing what everybody's doing and having the input and not leaving it to just be a bunch of can of worms. He says, that's what you do as a director. That's your job.
Mm. What are some of your favorite horror movie scores, or just scores in general?
Well, let's think about this. I mean, obviously, John Williams is the grand master of orchestral stuff. Every one of those movies is a mega home run. Mm. The other favorite is Jerry Goldsmith, and I think that has 2 things. One, Jerry's music appeals to me personally, and plus, I actually, because of Star Trek, got to spend some personal time with Jerry. I was in a room with him, like get to pick his brain, and watch him do his thing over his shoulder. So back to what I learned from John Carpenter, being around Jerry Goldsmith was the other thing. And it's funny, James Horner was the composer on a movie I did a long time called Battle Beyond the Stars, and he was just the pup at that point. So I got to work with Horner in his early days, and in my early days, so we stayed buddies for a long time. And Jerry was also his hero. Like, he wanted to be Jerry Goldsmith. Mm-hmm. That was what, and eventually, he became his own thing. But that was his model, the way Jerry stuff. And remember, Jerry was way back in Twilight Zone when it was TV and stuff like that. He was the guy. So I asked him one time. I says, Jerry, where does this stuff come from? I mean, I'm just a kid at the time. And he says, I got to be honest with you. He says, Gustav Mahler is my guy. Mm. He says, when I hear Mahler, his music is the music I want to make. So back to all of us climb on the shoulders of the guys who went in front. And we build and we do better because somebody already went there, figured this out, did a good job. It resonates to us personally, and then we just go on top of it. And make eventually your own thing. There was a great quote from Frank Zappa, and he says, "Well, a lot of artists plagiarize, and you can tell, but he says the good artists can steal." Like you pick it, but you don't know where nobody knows where you got that from.
Right.
You own it. You make it your own thing.
Yeah. I like that. Do you have any words of advice or wisdom for anybody out there who may be pursuing a career as a composer or in the sound effects department?
Yeah. When people ask me this, I recommend that they go into video games. Video games is the new media platform, and they have money. I mean, if you want to poke around in the world of films right now, you're doing it for free. You're doing it on credit cards and your buddies and favors to get started. You can get a gig at Blizzard or Electronic Arts right now as a sound designer. The composer chair is a little more tough, but it's also the big opportunity is for a technical sound designer, somebody that'll actually learn code and learn how to work the machine as well as do the art. If you master that now in your young career, you will own the world. Mm. You'll be able to show up in your pajamas and be an asshole, and they'll still keep you working because you can do the job. Mm-hmm. So I recommend to look at the new opportunities in new media. Not you can't do movies and stuff like that. If it's your passion, that's fine. But there's been several video game composers that have crossed over to movies. Look at Michael Giacchino. I mean, he was Medal of Honor, and now he's doing Star Trek and all kinds of stuff. So finding an opportunity is the main thing, and certainly working with your buddies. Doing it alone's tough. Collaboration is the idea of filmmaking. It is the idea of art. A one-man show. God bless the person who does it, but having another person to say, "Hey, that's cool. That sucks. How about we do it this way?" And I've always collaborated. That's the best for me. So that's work with your buddies. Whether it's your best friend or the guy from college or your drinking buddy or the guy you do the bong with, or your girlfriend's friend or whatever. Working together is everything, and we need that. Humans are not made to be alone. If you leave a person alone for too long, bad stuff starts to happen.
It's true. That's very, very true.
Yeah.
We do have somebody in the green room who would like to jump on and ask you a question.
Sure.
This is Christian. How's it going, Christian?
Hey, what's going on, Piz?
How's it going, man?
Good. Hi, Alan. It's a pleasure to. I actually got to meet you once before, and I purchased. You had the manuscripts for sale at Texas Frightmare.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So I got to meet you. We got to talk about my favorite score, Halloween 3. And I'm also a musician, an aspiring musician. I would love to score for movies. That's a dream of mine to do. So you've obviously been a huge inspiration to me with all the scores you've done, including movies like The Dentist, which I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, Brian Usna is quite a character.
I love Brian. Here. This is a little weird, Alan, but I wanted to ask you this. So, being a fan of you, I try to collect your scores, and I've got movies on cassette like Halloween 4, 5, and 3, and I notice it's from this label called Veras Sarabande. What do you know about that label? Because it seems like they were mostly film scores, right?
Yeah, that was one of the original film score labels. They've grown up now. Veras Sarabande is what we say it. They've been acquired, I think, by Concord Music recently. But they were the ones that the first score for Escape from New York was on Veras Sarabande. They were like a little, couple of guys in a warehouse doing oddball stuff. In fact, Escape from New York was their first hit, and this was on vinyl.
Right.
So normally they'd sell like 5,000 records, something like that, and they sold 80,000 copies of Escape from New York.
Wow.
At the time. So they helped launch those guys. They're still around. As far as collecting my scores, a little plug, I have alanhowarth.com. I have a store there. All my music is available on CD for sure. I have some of it on vinyl. That Halloween manuscript you held up is available there. A short story on that. Normally you wouldn't get a written score by me, but when we did Halloween 2, 3, and Escape from New York, in the film contract was required that there be a written score. Well, me and John just jammed. It was never written down. So I had to go back and transcribe the scores contractually. And so these scores are actually my handwritten, a real manuscript, not a computer generated. This is a real manuscript. So it's a great collector's item. They also have those on the web store. You should definitely have. That's the best deal on my thing. They're like $40.
Right.
And they got 2 pictures of me and John, and I sign everything. So if you want to pump up your collection, so the day we all go crazy, you got to put it on eBay and make some money. It's a good investment, and awesome. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Alan. If you don't mind me asking one tiny little thing,
oh no, good.
Did the Veras guys? Did they come to like the master tapes? I guess for these scores, did y'all just hand them over? Was it as simple as that? Did they have to go through a studio with this kind of stuff?
No, I made them all.
Okay, right.
Literally, right. I made them all in my studio. Got them down to a 1/4 inch. Gave them the finally edited thing. They put it through a mastering session, for levels, just to make all the tracks even. But I pretty much I had it all worked out before I gave it to them. Right. And my philosophy on those soundtracks is I would do them in the order of the movie, like as opposed to quote putting the hit as the first. In the old days, a band would put their whatever's going to be the hit as the first cut, something like that. I always felt that it was a musical story. So I wanted people to listen to the album and take the journey of the movie in sequence of the way it was presented as a score to a movie, so that you could visualize in your mind the opening scene and the first chase and the da-da-da-da-da, and the ending would be the ending. So all my soundtracks are always done chronologically.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Alan. And I think I speak for all us fans when I say, as great as it is that John has his son working with him on these new Halloween films, I think all of us Halloween fans not only want, but demand you step in for at least one more Halloween film with John. So we love you. We thank you for all the stuff that you've done for us.
Yeah, no, I'd love to work with him again. You never know, right? You
never know. Fingers crossed.
And all our filmmakers out there, I'm approachable. I do scores. Like I say, it even in the low budget world, I'll help people. There's a certain about it being senior and the idea of giving back and helping the new guys learn from what I know how to do.
Excellent. Thank you, Piz. Thank you, Alan. It's nice seeing y'all. Nice talking to y'all.
Yeah, thank you, Christian.
Bye.
Have a good night, man.
All right, buddy.
We've got a question here from my buddy Toronto Freddy. He says, Halloween 2 is my absolute favorite composure of the Halloween score. I love the synthy 80s feel. Thank you so much for your rendition. So not a question, just some praise thrown your way.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's funny. I mentioned this movie Hoax. The director came to me and he said, I want you to do what you did in the 80s. I want an 80s score for my movie. Can you do that? What do you mean, can I do that? I'm an expert. But I actually had to kind of put my analog rig back together because everything's been all in software. So it was going back to the old days of actually recording audio tracks instead of MIDI tracks. So it was a little more labor, but it was fun and I enjoyed it. And I'm telling you, the original boxes do that 80s thing. Twisting the knobs and playing with the filters and the modulations. Doing it with a mouse, it's not the same. And in fact, Sequential Circuits just reissued the Prophet 5. It was called, there was a Rev, there was a Rev 1, Rev 2, and Rev 3. I have a Rev 3 here, which was sort of the apex of the day. They just did a Rev 4, which has Rev 1, 2, and 3 in it, plus a Rev 4 on top of it. It's a major you got to have if you ever want to go to 80 scores. Just get that one. It's the right instrument.
Very cool. And thank you for that super chat, Toronto Freddy. Much obliged. We've got somebody else in the green room with a question for you. Aaron, how's it going, man?
Hey, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. How are you?
Good.
Hey, Aaron. Hey, bud.
It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Cool. Cool. What do you got?
I just had a question. You were talking about frequencies.
Sure.
Frequencies, you said that some frequencies can induce healing.
Yep.
Have you ever considered using frequencies to create unease during maybe a horror scene or something to further drive the terror?
Excellent question. And the answer is yes. So when I first learned about all this stuff, I'm getting an echo off you.
Let me mute him for a second. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so this would be like 2005, 6. So when I first learned about it, I did it very holy, and it was for healing and other stuff. And I said, I'm going to try this on a horror score. So I did a movie called Basement Jack, and I used these frequencies in the score. And that year, I got an award for the scariest music. So the decoding of this is whatever the intent of the artist is amplified by using the right frequencies. So shifting the score to the heart, which is this 424 business, you could induce love or fear. It works both ways. So if you're some death metal thing and you want to make the maximum death metal music, shifting the frequencies is definitely going to get more out of what you're doing.
Interesting. It's very interesting. Also, another thought I had was you were talking about the notes of the actual soundtrack and the music blending together into the same note, and then you had to change the notes because they blended together.
Yeah.
Have you ever used them together to create a chord to work together that way?
Sure. No, and there's several of my scores. I did one movie called Retribution, and that's we're talking about Halloween 4. If you want them to blend, then the sound effects and the music are all one thing. In the case of Breaking It Away, it was because the sound effects disappeared. They became part of the score. And especially if I was doing this, in this case, a Star Trek movie, then it was all on synthesizers. I had to untune so that the sound effect would be different than the score, and you could hear it. So it's back to art. You can either make them all the same color, or you have to make them different colors.
Very interesting. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, Aaron. Take care, man.
You too. Thanks.
We've got a question here from my buddy Gypsy Warrior. He asks, Alan, have you ever replaced or been replaced on a project? Also, do you sign a contract with the distributor or the production company you rock?
All right. Well, we'll go backwards. So the deal is usually it's with the production company, not distribution. So the filmmaker is making a project. Like they're going to build a house, and then they're going to have somebody buy the house. So the deal is with the production company, and mostly my point of contact is either the producer, the director, or the film editor. Those are the three places where I knew somebody or got to introduce somebody and made my deal with those people. People don't pay much for music lately. I mean, I'm telling you that I'll give you some real numbers. I mean, like the most I ever got for a score, I think I did Halloween 5 and 6 for like 60 grand. Now that's all in. That's having the studio, all the player, my composition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Recently, I was offered scores for $2,000 all in.
Wow.
I mean, but that's because I'm against you guys that are living at home and you can do it on a laptop in your parents' house or in the basement on a laptop with no cost, and people want opportunity. So it's a little crazy. In fact, I was offered to score to Sharknado. Check this one out. I saw the movie. The director's my buddy, Anthony Ferranti. I raised him as a kid. He goes, "Oh, we got a $2,000." And I looked at it, and just my mother was in some ill health, and I passed. Well, now here for $2,000, I passed something that probably has residuals of 15 grand a year. So you just don't know. You just don't know. It's a wild thing. Back to the first question. Tell me the first question again.
The first question was, have you ever replaced or been replaced on a project?
Yeah. So this is back to the relationships. I did a movie called The Omega Code. This was for Trinity Broadcasting. It was sort of an end of the world apocalyptic thing. Myself and another buddy of mine, John Novello, did the score on the first pass. And it was two dynamics on this. One, it was when the early digital editing was coming around. And so they could continually fool with the edit. You know, like in the old days, you had to literally take a razor and cut the stuff, right? Now they were into digital editing. And so the picture editor was going crazy on this opening scene, give me version 1, version 2. I was up to like version 15. And I got hung on keeping up with the cuts. So the idea of the composing, I got caught up in this editing thing. So we got behind in the schedule. So now all of a sudden they wanted a screening, and we had to crank out the score in like a week just to blast through anything. And it was, I'll say the best job, but the dynamics of it. So we did that, and now they fired the director. Well, I was the director's guy. So I actually was replaced by Harry Manfredini, and Harry came in and finished the thing. So Harry's a good guy. He's my buddy. And so I remember sitting with him because they held me on. They kept me on for the sound effects. They just got a new composer.
Oh.
And so now it was a little weird. Like I got fired from the show, but I'm still the sound designer, but I got a new composer. And Harry's a, Friday the 13th guy. He's been there, done that. He's like another decade of scoring before me. He goes, "Alan, you ain't nobody till you've been fired at least once." He says, "That's part of your education. You got to learn how to roll with it." So yeah, stuff happens. It's mostly about, I never did something that was so shitty that I got thrown out because it was shitty. But like I say, regime change or recuts or producers really always wanted their buddy to do it. And they came in and saw what I was doing and go, "Oh, my buddy could do that." And they let me go and got their buddy to do it. So it's a people thing more so than an artistic thing.
Yeah. Did you have any issues with the Weinsteins on Halloween 6?
No, they were happy both times. And it was the director, Joe, and I'm going to forget his last name right now. Just
Chappelle.
Yeah, Joe Chappelle. Joe took all the heat. Because so he was buddies with Mustafa in the original production, and then the Weinsteins come on, and now he has to kiss the ring of the Weinsteins and make them modify the show to make those guys happy to be done.
Yeah.
So I wasn't on the front line on that one. I was a crew member.
No shrapnel then. You caught no shrapnel.
No. I just had to go to K rations for a while. That's all.
We've got somebody else in the green room. Al, how's it going?
How you doing, Piz? Thanks for having me on. Alan, I just want to say it's an honor, and thank you for all your work working on the Halloween films. I'm a big fan. Your scores are absolutely incredible, and that's all I wanted to say. Enjoy your Halloween, be safe, and take care.
Cool. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate the compliment. I'm just doing what I love, like anything. If I love what I'm doing a good job. If I don't like it, it's going to be crappy. So I just try to find things I like to do.
Here's an interesting question from my buddy AJ. He says, Alan, did the unfortunate events that occurred on the set of The Twilight Zone, the movie, have an effect on your time or work on the movie? What are your memories from working on that film?
We were working on it, and then the shit happened,
Mhm.
and so there was a shockwave, obviously, for everybody. So at that point, we kind of wrapped up what we were doing with that event. However far we got, then the whole movie went into freeze mode, and until they resolved it, we were done. And I think at that point, back to regime change. The director had to step away from it. Other people came in to finish it, so they had their buddy. So that was a horrible incident, but it happened. It happened. Yeah.
What are you up to these days? I know you mentioned a couple of different projects that you scored. You mentioned doing the live sets, of course, pre-COVID. Are there any other projects or anything you're working on at this point?
Well, I mentioned the frequency thing. That's my pet project. So I'm working on an app right now, so everybody can hear their own favorite music tuned to their personal resonances. And actually, I'll share something with you. We're amongst friends here, right?
Absolutely.
This music, especially the frequencies for the plants, is a big deal. So I'm working on some patents for the idea of something we're going to call the hyperspectral frequency management process. And the idea is creating software that will manage the sound, the light, the temperature, the humidity, the frequencies in the water, and create an optimal software package for growing green things, if you know what I mean.
I think I understand what I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, and so my son is an expert. He works for a group here in Los Angeles. He's already a master, and so I'm working on in support of him for this idea. Well, this same thing will transfer to tomatoes and cucumbers and everything, but the idea is plants are alive. Mm-hmm. So interspecies communication, right? Having the plant receive all its elements during its growth cycle, but then also putting sensors on the plants to let the plant talk to you. Turns out the plants actually make sound. Mm-hmm. And the sounds the plants make are in the very high frequencies, up where bats are. So we don't hear it, but it can be recorded on a microphone and sensed on software. So if the plant is hungry or it's hot or it's stressed out or it's thirsty, it gives off noises that can be then taken in, and the system would adjust right away. So much like an ICU for plants is what the idea. Oh. So that's an interesting little sidebar. But I'd love to just keep scoring. I'll tell you, that is the most fun. I really enjoyed this last movie, the Cosmic Dawn. It gave me a chance to lock the door and do a score. Otherwise, life is bits and pieces, and my daughter has restaurants. I get involved in their business. My son has his business, but I'm a dad, so that's okay too.
Yeah.
I got family. I'm really, really close to my kids. They're doing well in their own world. My son-in-law is actually running for city council of Newport Beach, so we're going to get into local politics. So that's life, And yeah. I love building things. So my wife and I. My wife's name is Melody. On top of that, I'm married to a Melody. So you talk about
makes sense.
Fate, and it's not a joke. It's really her name. And I met her and I fell in love right away. We've been together 45 years now, so it's definitely the right thing to do.
Congratulations.
But I thank you. I have a house that I'm working on in the west side of Cleveland. Remember, I'm a Cleveland kid. It's literally right on Lake Erie, so we call it the Lake House. And that's sort of like my golden years. I just put a beautiful studio on top of the garage, 3-car garage. And I could go there and kind of do nothing except create.
Yeah.
Because I'm far enough along in my life that, it's like while we're on this show, I'm making money, right? Halloween's running someplace.
Exactly. Somewhere, yeah. No doubt about it.
So every October I'm making money while I'm sleeping. So that's one thing I did right in life. And then, and then keeping up with the music, all this other stuff. I could also see going on tour in colleges as like a guest in film schools or in stuff, and like spend a weekend with the class and have them score for me and give them feedback, because I have something that you guys don't have, and it takes a while. I have what's called wisdom. That's from doing it enough times that you saw it work and you saw it not work, and you can give direction to things. So I'm into giving back and sharing. You know, before I leave this planet, I'm planning on living for 150 years, so it'll be a while yet.
Yeah, still got plenty of time.
Yeah, I got plenty of time, but you know, I think there's a book in me, and there's a movie in there. So, you know, this whole pyramid thing with the resonance and the frequencies, and plants for music for plants and people, and taking it beyond horror movies. I told him that in some ways I feel like the guy Nobel, and who does the Nobel Prize. He made all his money. He invented dynamite. But once he got to the point where he could be philanthropic, he went and gave Nobel Prizes, encouraged all the good things in life. So that's a thread in my being that continues.
Very cool. All right, so last chance, if you guys have any questions for Mr. Howarth. My buddy Gypsy Warrior would like to know, what was Dino De Laurentiis like?
I never met Dino, but a funny story about Dino, when I did the movie Army of Darkness, and so I was very involved with Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell was in the studio with me a lot, and we really involved with the soundtrack. And Sam obviously in the perimeter. But while we were doing Army of Darkness, Dino was tied up in a lawsuit with Universal Pictures over the sequel rights to Silence of the Lambs. So we finished Army of Darkness, and the movie didn't come out for a year because it got caught up in this Dino's lawsuit crap, which was a drag because, you know, you do a project and it was good, and Army of Darkness is a classic, right? That's Sam and Bruce for sure. But all the wind came out of the sail. Like you parked the boat in a garage for a year. So when it finally came out, I was like already onto something else. And I really lost the momentum of that project, which was a drag. So if I had to complain to Dino at all, it's because he should have just made a deal and get on with it. But the lawyers dragged it out.
Yeah. My buddy Jamie, she asks, what other composers inspire you? Is there anyone you'd like to work with?
Couple buddies that are really good composers that I enjoy. Hans Zimmer for sure.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. And then anything that's good. Like Trent Reznor did a great job, and you know, and he actually used to come to my music store. He's one of the kids that was around in Cleveland when I was in Cleveland. So you know, the thread. Mark Mothersbaugh was a good buddy. I actually knew him when he had a band called Flossie Bobbitt before Devo. We used to jam because we were like the cool guys in town. So we'd get together and jam. No particular names at this point. You know, when it's good, I appreciate it. You know, but here's the thing. I've now gotten to the point, you know, a young composer is going to have to make music that sounds like somebody else because that's what the director wants.
Right. Like
make me John Williams or make me Hans Zimmer or whatever. I've luckily gone far enough that they hire me to be me, and that's what I'm really good. Don't ask me to be Jerry Goldsmith or Hans Zimmer. It's not going to work.
Right.
You know, I'm not good at that, but I'm good at being me, and so I've gone far enough in my career that I get hired to be me, and then everything's good.
Very cool. Gonzalo asks, have you ever collaborated with Charles Bernstein?
I haven't worked with him, but I've met him a couple of times, and we've kind of been lumped together. I did a music library with a company called Liquid Audio, and they took Charles' work and my work and put it into the same library for people to now relicense that music to use in other productions.
Very cool.
Nice guy. Very nice guy.
What does my buddy Jaxius, who does all the music for my channel, he's a very, very gifted sound designer or sound. How did you describe it? A sound
sonic composer.
Sonic composer. That's it.
I'm going to be the first sonic composer. Anybody can use that too, but just say, you know, Alan was the first one to use that term.
He's a very good sonic composer. He's done a lot of music for my channel, which is very awesome. He would like to know, what does a typical workday look like when you're scoring a film?
Well, my own personal work cycle is that I relax first thing when I wake up and I have coffee and I kind of hang out and do stuff. And then I'm in the studio at 10, 11, 12. I've already had lunch, so I'm not hungry. And then I just stay in the studio till I drop.
Mm.
So I've never, you know, some people in their jobs, you know, they go to work and they're done at 5 or 6 and then they have dinner and they relax. I'm flipped on that. I relax first thing, kind of do what I'm going to do. And then once I'm engaged in the studio, I just go till I'm too tired to work and I go home. Yeah.
Right.
Another interesting story. For a long time, I had a studio at the house, which was great, especially when I was a dad and had young kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I always had to create some sort of a thing when you're working and when you're not working, because it's a big run-on sentence. So like when the studio was in the dining room and I had before kids, I used to have this one blue light that I turned on. And when the blue light was on, we were working, and when the blue light was off, we weren't. I had to have some little on-off thing. Then eventually the studio went to the garage, so I was not in the house anymore, and my wife could raise the kids and do that stuff. And Dad was in the garage, and that worked out great because every time there was some event, I could interact with the kids. And I you know, around 4 o'clock, we used to have what's called the arsenic hour, when the kids were too much for my wife. She was ready to kill them. So I'd kind of jump in and take over the kids, and we'd have dinner, and I'd tell them bedtime stories, and then go back to the studio and stay work late. You know, from being in the band business, you're always working at night, so I'm always been a night creature. And there's something about the night that's different than the day. You got to know that that's true.
Oh yeah.
During the day, the sun is dominant, fresh air, sunshine, all this other stuff. At night, you're into the stars and what's out there in the universe. Mm-hmm. And to me, that appealed to me. That was like, what else is out there? You know, I want to know about that stuff. So I've been a night creature.
It's the moon. The moon affects the tides. It affects all sorts of different things. The vibrations.
The vibrations are different. Right? The sun is dominant all day. I know. Admittedly, if you go into a dark studio and you turn all this stuff off and you're just among your equipment, you're in a timeless zone. You go into a time warp ship if you want. But in general, just my cycles. I'm a night guy.
Okay. We've got one more person in the green room that we're going to get to, and then I'm going to call it. We're going to be done with the Q&A, but we've got filmmaker Jamie Blanks here. Jamie, how you doing, man?
All right, you're on.
Hey, can you hear us? Oh, there we go.
Nice to meet you, Alan.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining the show. We're having fun.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you got you.
I've been a lifelong fan of yours, Alan. The very first soundtrack I ever bought was Escape from New York. And I'm a filmmaker and a composer these days. And I wanted to ask you about, do you have a preference for working with virtual, instruments these days, or the classic analog stuff? What do you tend to work with most of the time now?
For convenience, the virtual stuff is happening. I got a lot of Arturia, a lot of native instruments stuff. That's all way up to speed. It makes great sounds. The Arturia analog version 7 of all the classics. I got all that stuff and instead of having a room full of stuff. Here, this is a quickie 5-cent tour here. So I got my Prophet 5, and
nice.
There's a Mini Moog, and that's the original ARP Avatar, which is an Odyssey. That's the one from Escape from New York. That's the original beast going on. And then I'm set up in 5.1, so I'm doing the surround. There's a DAT machine because I got a lot of old material and a tube preamp for the mic pre, and then I got the Mackie controller. That's all running Pro Tools. Here we're back. This is the laptop I was on. I got a big screen here which got the Pro Tools on it, and so that's the gear. It's pretty reduced from the old days of what I used to have when it was a room full of synths and wires and stuff like that, patch bays. But I love gear, so I had no problem with it. That was fun.
Oh, it's so easy to collect the gear, isn't it? I love it too. It's a bit of a sickness. We get sort of obsessed with it. Do you tools to do your composing, or do you work in Logic, or what do you work with, Alan?
Yeah. I compose in Logic, and then I output to Pro Tools, and I deliver Pro Tools sessions to the producer, or the director, or the dub stage.
Right.
That's sort of like common currency. I know a lot of guys
Yeah,
are in the
that's
video
smart.
game world are into Nuendo though. So if you're into video stuff, video game stuff, a lot of stuff is Nuendo. And the nice thing about the
Right.
Nuendo is it's got a handshake between Yamaha's Nuendo into the Yamaha world of mixers and stuff like that. There's some intercommunication. So if you do a session in Nuendo and then also I use Wise, WWISE Wise. That's the video
Yeah,
game software
right.
I work in. So I had to learn
Right,
Wise.
right.
I took courses in it. It took a while to get this non-linear stuff in my head because I'm a linear guy. But when I was doing all the stuff at Magic Leap, we were doing it in Wise. So that was the most powerful, had the most artistic breadth of software. And then there's another one. It's Wise and something else. I'd like the two that everybody uses right now. So that's the interactive world.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm sure you took to it like a duck to water with your technical prowess, my friend.
Yeah, no, but I never learned coding. It's funny. When I started learning computer stuff, I was actually on punch cards. This is how old it was. But it's I'm not afraid of it, but I'm not like the guys that really do the code. I mean, I'm not there. I guess I'm too lazy.
Well, I was just fascinated to hear how you did Escape from New York, where you just had the dialogue track to work to because you didn't have all the synchronization abilities back in those days. That's an amazingly complex score for doing it that way. I mean, it's just, there's so much stuff going on in that score. The crazies coming out of the potholes is one of my all-time favorite cues that you and Carpenter did together.
Yeah, I did that with my
with
my Stratocaster and some echo and a steel bar, like a slide guitar thing, chomping around on the guitar, making effects out of it.
I know Robert Rodriguez tried to emulate that track for his Planet Terror Grindhouse. He ended up just licensing your track because he couldn't figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Oh, funny. South Park just licensed the track from They Live and they put it into their pandemic special.
Ah, that's awesome.
Seriously? Okay, check that out.
Yeah. It's in the scene when all the kids are now quarantined in the gym because somebody got COVID and now they all got to be quarantined. So they're like hanging out. They're living at school. They're sleeping in their sleeping bags in the gym and stuff like that. It's like a drag, and they do the whole They Live.
So they used the main title cue, did they?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, they actually used the track. My buddy Anthony Ferranti, the guy from Sharknado, called me up and he says, "Hey, man, they used your thing in South Park. You got to check this out." So I said, "Yeah, great. I can buy. I'll get a check and I can buy some more dog food." I mean,
Well, your influence is felt to this day in music all over the place, Alan. You've made a massive contribution to the genre. And
thank you. I'm very
filmmaker,
blessed. It was never planned. I just lived life and stuff happened, And I tell everybody, and this is really true. We all have talent, and we make the most of our talent. But it's about your relationships that make your career. If you are an asshole, people will very quickly lose your number. But if you hang in at the end and you're not a whiny guy that fucking changed this and this is a problem and why do we do this 3 times over, you just be on the team and you're there to help everybody get finished. That's the key. That's what keeps people bringing you back over and over again.
Yeah. Well, I just want to applaud you on that entire era of work that you did with John Carpenter. I just think that's the best work he ever did musically, and you can tell your sound all the way through that whole era. And I guess you gave him the sound palette to work with.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the original relationship is I had all the gear, and he had the movie. So he came over my house. I kept all my gear flying. I put up all the sound palette in front of him, and he pushed the black and white notes and watched his movie. It was great. It was an excellent collaboration. It was the right stuff. In fact, there would be times when I try to explain to him how the technology worked, and he'd go, "Alan, I don't even want to know. That's your job."
I bet. Oh, it was wonderful to speak to you, Mr. Howarth. I'm a big fan, man. So
good. So where are you located? Where are you at?
I'm in Melbourne, Australia. We've just come out of locked Melbourne.
Oh, great. Well, I remember the first time I went to Australia, I actually had to go into the tub and see if the water went down the drain the opposite way. And it did.
It does go the other way.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, Jamie is a filmmaker too, Alan. He directed the films Urban Legend and Valentine, which you may have heard of.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
heard of them.
and I scored my last 2 movies as well. So I love music in movies, and I self-taught on the piano. The very first thing I taught myself to play on the piano was the Halloween theme. I guess it's, for horror fans, it's chopsticks.
Well,
right?
well, no, little kids all the time they come and show me that they can play the Halloween theme on the piano. It's like the new chopsticks. It's the one thing that's easy enough to play that anybody could play it. And that's the gift of Carpenter. I mean, if as a musician you'd look at what he does and you go, that's too simple. Really? Are you kidding?
Simple. His filmmaking, he keeps it simple. His coverage,
but that's
a masterclass.
That's him. That's what he brings to the whole art form, and I learned that from him. Because as it was slow down, I had another buddy of mine that's like Mr. Keyboard whiz, a guy named John Devello. Like, do all this stuff. And he goes, Alan, you get it more out of one note than anybody I ever met.
Exactly. I love that.
So that was a compliment to the idea of this, to texture and the design and the filter and the modulation. There's still one note.
That's right. There's a lot more than just a note going on. You've got a whole lot of other stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, it's the palette. It's the palette manipulation that really makes this stuff go. So yeah, cool. Well, sometime have me work with you on one of your scores, man.
All right.
Even if we do a cue or two,
Oh, I'd love to. That would be a dream to collaborate with you, my friend. I would love that.
Well, I got a website. There's an email there. Send me your stuff. Yeah. Let's figure out something to do. That'll be fun.
Yeah, right on. That's awesome. Hey, we've made a connection here. We've made a connection.
You go with the flow. You go with the flow, man. That's everything. Yeah.
Well, thanks.
I don't want to jump into it too hard, but the They Live movie is becoming very real.
Ah.
Yeah, Roddy Piper said that it was a documentary, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, the scenes of the cardboard communities in Los Angeles. Well, guess what's there? And the fact that the aliens and the elite have collaborated. Guess what's going on? I mean, it's definitely it's.
We could talk some more about that stuff too. That's a topic of great interest to me too. The whole.
I'm a conspiracy guy. I'm deep into that stuff. You ever read a book called "Behold the Pale Horse" by
No, I have not.
Cooper? Oh, you got to check it out.
I'll look it up.
Forget his last name. Behold a Pale Horse. This guy was he was in the Navy at the Information Control Center, and saw the whole plan, exactly what's happening now. He saw this stuff 40 years ago and wrote the book.
Oh, that's cool.
It's all called. Everything that's happening has already been planned for a long time.
Wow.
Right up my alley, Alan.
Yeah. All right.
I love that.
Well, Jamie, thanks for stopping in. There's a lot of love for Urban Legend in the chat, and a lot of love for you. So thanks, man.
That's so nice. Thank you, everybody.
All right, Jamie. Take it easy, bud.
Cheers.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Good one.
My buddy Gypsy Warrior snuck in one last question before I called it quits. He would like to know what was the thought process for the Christine music.
All right. So again, this was right after John did The Thing, and the fact that The Thing wasn't a hit, John was on the edge of a nervous breakdown because he knew he had made the greatest monster movie ever, and it was a fuck up at Universal because E.T. came out the same time as The Thing, and the marketing people ran with Spielberg, and The Thing was on Time magazine, so they pulled it. So as John says, it was considered a flop, and he needed a gig. So he got hired to do Christine, and of course he did his stuff. And it was pretty simple. And in fact, like I said, if you listen to a couple of those cues in The Thing, you can hear the emergence of what became Christine. It was this drone stuff. Now again, the magic theme of Christine, which is that's John, for sure. But he came, and it went really smooth. It was like a 6-week process, and because the movie had all that rock and roll in it, there was only, if you look at the Christine score, there might be about 35 minutes worth of music, where normally there's an hour. But the concept was we just sat down, watched the movie. John played. I kept putting stuff in front of him. And then when it got to be like the main Christine attacks, I jumped on the sequencers and made the whole backtrack. And then John put the theme on top of it. So it's a classic. It's a classic. I go to conventions that are about Christine. I go with the rest of the crew. I get to meet all the actors, and I'm one of the legacy characters from that thing. It lives on. They talk about doing a prequel. So rather than doing a sequel, there's the story of Christine coming off the assembly line and what happened up until the old guy that his brother was freaked by the car. There's a whole story there that's great opportunity to revisit all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I mean, that's all I've got for you tonight, Mr. Howarth. I just want to thank you so much for giving us the last 2 hours. It's been incredibly informative, so entertaining, and just a lot of fun. Everybody in the chat's just eating it up.
Cool.
And I really can't thank you enough. Hopefully this, things will go back to some semblance of normal soon, and, get to meet you at a convention or something to that effect.
Yeah, I love doing the conventions and meeting people. I'm just the same as you guys. I just happen to be like 50 years older right now. That's all. But we're all in the morning. We all got to have coffee and take a shower and go to the bathroom, and then we do our thing. I'm the same as you guys. I've just been very blessed, and people like me, and I just perpetuated a career at the right time.
And where can people find you online?
All right, so alanhowarth.com, my name.com. And then on all that frequency stuff, Natural Resonance, NATURALRESONANCE.net, naturalresonance.net is the secondary thread of that whole pyramid frequency stuff. And then all my music is available in my web store. I sign everything. That's collector's items. That's doesn't make me rich, but I do it, and I sign everyone. They're not pre-signed, so if you want a special message to Bob or to Caroline or to Happy Halloween or whatever, I'll do all that stuff. You just put it in the email when you order it.
Awesome. So alanhowarth.com. But you're also on Facebook, are you not?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, definitely Facebook, and my Twitter handle is SoundLord1 as a Twitter thing, and then I'll autograph a lot of stuff. I'm working with a guy named Josh Clark, so he's marketing all my signatures now for all the sound effects work. And actually, I'll be in Vegas in December. There's a Star Trek convention, so that's the first time I'll go to a Star Trek something, assuming that there's still a Las Vegas in a month. But
let's hope so.
We'll see. Yeah. Hey, here's the thing: you have to think good thoughts for good things to happen. Do not buy into the fear thing. I mean, I did a convention one time. I was a convention. It was in a festival in Poland, and they had the greatest thing. It was about horror movie music, and the theme was the pleasure of a good scare. Horror movie music, but that's so you can get scared in a safe environment, and then go back to regular life. Mm-hmm. But going out and having fear in the street and worrying about your bills and worrying about what you're going to do, that's just a waste of time. I wrote this. This might close around for you. So I wrote this note to myself, like note to self, right? Mm-hmm. Do not, under any circumstances, be afraid, because fear is only a lack of faith. You have to have faith in yourself and that this is a good life, and you're going to have one that way. That's the closer, man. Mm-hmm. Everybody manifest good stuff for yourself. Don't buy into this crap.
There you go. Great. That's a great way to close it out. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Howarth. I appreciate your time. Shout out to Toronto Freddy, Gypsy Warrior, Gonzalo. Thank you for the super chats. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We've had a very lively, very, very positive, very nice chat tonight on both Twitch and YouTube. So thank you all for tuning in. This has been really amazing. So again, thank you, Mr. Howarth.
You're welcome.
And to everybody watching at home, thank you all for tuning in. I'll play you guys out with some music. And again, think positive, stay positive, take care, and peace.
Amen.